Good morning, y'all. So I thought I would take you on my coffee run this morning, and then when I get parked, I'll finish my message to you all. So my mind this morning, which is rare, normally it's like if I can get up, brush my teeth, and get moving, I'm doing good. So, but this morning, I'm having what I normally have at night. I'm having a flood of thoughts and revelations, essentially. I'm reminiscing a lot. I'm thinking about my childhood, my upbringing, and how that plays a part in who I am today, and that's just a tiny portion of what's been just flooding into my mind. So I want to share this with you all, and I hope you're doing good. So, in the Bible, I love how it speaks very deep and important truths that are relevant throughout all of time. These are truths that are just immune to a culture and location and all the changes that seem to come with everything else in this world. I love this. And let me give you some examples. So I feel like a lot of times many different jobs or careers throughout many different industries seem to overcomplicate everything, including the ingredients to distinguish themselves from other manufacturers when you're considering things like soap or shampoo or toothpaste or deodorant or anything like that. It's kind of like you have your base ingredients that everybody uses, all the companies use. And this is kind of going back to one of the industries I was in. But you have to have some distinguishing factor to make you or your company stand out from all the rest, right? Okay, so to me, how does this translate? This translates into having to justify a reason to be in the market at all anyways. It's sort of like, if all you really need, I don't really know the actual base ingredients to deodorant, for example, because I just got up, got ready, and left the house, so it's on my mind. But I'm sure there are these base ingredients that all the different manufacturers use. So if life was simple, you would just have that one base formula on the shelf, and that's it. Now, could I make an argument as a consumer that I would prefer to have options, maybe some different fragrances? Maybe I want my deodorant or my soap to smell a certain way and somebody else likes a different smell. Yeah, I could do that, but essentially we don't really need all the variations out there, right? This is just, I'm going to translate this over. This is an analogy, okay? So for people like me who I don't consider myself to be a high maintenance type person. I know that that's typically associated with women, but I can tell you absolutely that there are some men who are way entrenched in that type of lifestyle, hands down, just being high maintenance. But I prefer simplicity. This is just me. And so, and anybody who knows me, like really knows me, not just, a lot of people say they know you and even that they're close to you, and they're really not. You may only talk to them, once every 4 or 5 years, and have never really shared any meaningful experiences together and things like that, which is so interesting. But people who truly, really know you, they're going to know just by your lifestyle if this is, really you. If you're just someone who truly values simplicity, minimalism, and things like that, right? So, where am I going with this? I have this flood of thoughts, but I think it's the process of translating this into language to share with you all that's kind of sluggish in the morning for me. And normally I have this kind of flood at night too. But this whole overcomplication for the purposes of standing out in a market, this can happen also with linguistics, right? With, I think that's the right way to say this, with labels and terms that are unique to certain markets, including that of counseling and any psychological treatment. And while I do find value in the unique meaning that all of these various terms put forth or stand for or represent, I do find value in that. It can get overcomplicated sometimes for just the average person, I would say, especially, who's just trying to make heads or tails of what they've been through. You know what I mean? So that's why I really appreciate the simplicity and yet simultaneously the depth that is encompassed in the terms in the Bible, such as wolves in sheep's clothing. To me, what does that mean? It means someone who has bad intentions, someone who's pretending to be something they're not, someone who's pretending to be innocent, and with a person with good intention and honest and all the things that come with what's represented through the concept of a sheep, thinking of Christ as the shepherd, right? Okay, someone who's trying with good intentions, all that good stuff. And then the wolf, of course, is seeking to devour, looking for prey. It's a predator who is cloaking themselves in the clothing or the outward appearance of pretending to be a sheep, one of the others, which is why I personally am not big on large gatherings of that type, because I think that they are just a hot spot for predators to seek out their prey. I'm not trying to speak against that or persuade you one way or the other, but that's just me. So, you know, the body of Christ is not a building. The church, the true and real church, is not actually a building. It's the people, the members that make up the body of Christ, all right, through the Christian lens. I hope, again, that you can take what I have to share and apply your own lens to it, even if you're not Christian, right? Because I find value in all the different religions and philosophies too, and everything. So, wolves in sheep's clothing, that's why I use that term a lot on my channel. And the other term that came to me this morning, I'm losing it right now. Okay, y'all, I've had my breakfast and some coffee. The other term besides wolves in sheep's clothing from the Bible that I really appreciate is how it talks about being worldly. And so I looked up the word world in the online etymology dictionary, and it's from the Old English world, W-O-R-U-L-D, meaning human existence and the affairs of life. And I think, at least for me anyway, the concept of any one of us being worldly, more worldly than spiritual at least, tends to conjure up ideas of materialism. And so, and maybe that's a part of it. Maybe it is. I don't know. But I want to focus more in the message today about what it means to be worldly, and how this can just be another tool or lens that you can use in your toolkit of discernment. And it's not about judgment. It's about self-evaluation, to make sure that you are checking yourself, to make sure you're not entangled in this web, because we are all in the world. And it's just the way it is as part of this human experience, right? We're supposed to be, and we are, and as such, you know, we have to eat, so we have to, you know, make our money and just kind of play the game in that way with society. We sort of have to be a part of it to some extent, you know. I know you know all this, but I'm just sharing my thought process out loud with you all. And so there's no escaping it totally, unless, I guess, you joined what's it called, a monastery? You become a monk or whatever and live way up in the Himalayas. I don't know how it works. But unless you totally denounce, like, all of modern society and you go become a hermit in the woods, which kind of sounds nice. But for most of us, that's not possible. You know, we've got kids or whatever it is. So but I want to look at what it means to be worldly, not only to check oneself to make sure you're not too bad entangled in this web of modern culture, the fast life, and all the pressures that come with it, but also as you are meeting new people, and even if you're starting to notice some things of concern in people that you've known for some time. You know, maybe you've reached a new level of awareness, and you're able to detect when you feel more peaceful around some people and less peaceful around others or whatever. So this is just another avenue or a lens to use for your toolkit of discernment, right? So to be worldly, I like how it says it's related, the Old English word at least, is related to human existence and the affairs of life. And I think we do still use the word the world in that way today. But to me, just the simple act of looking up definitions sometimes brings another level of awareness. It's like you have the knowledge of what a word means, but then the understanding is another level. And sometimes when we look up these definitions and even the old root words and stuff, some of those, especially when you're digging into the history of a word, that can truly be a new revelation on a word for me. But even definitions that you think you know, you can see it in a new light because you've now changed. You know, I mentioned that recently in another video. It's like once we grow and change, we see things differently and we perceive things differently. And so you can look at the same old worn out definition of a word and it has a whole new level of meaning for you. So the state of affairs, that's kind of what I want to focus on when you're thinking about what it means to be worldly, so that you can make sure you're, you know, not so much, that you're in the world but not of it. And also when you're considering other people, especially wolves in sheep's clothing. This is a great tool to detect them, because that's how they hide. Per my experience, that's a big part of how they hide. Their sheep's clothing tends to be so overdone in their attempts to hide or masquerade, put forth a facade that is overdone. And the way you can detect it once you realize it, you're educated, is through this lens right here that I'm going to be talking about. So to be worldly, because they're going to conform, that's what they're going to do, and hope that they can blend in that manner. What they're going to do, first of all, they're not going to be a very stable person. And I'm drawing upon my own life experiences. And this is all ultimately for your protection as you go forward in life, right? And mine too. They're not going to be a stable person. There is going to be an element of materialism, but the specific part of that is that it's going to be changing a lot, shifting a lot. To keep up, I think, what's that old phrase, keeping up with the Joneses and stuff, it's sort of like that. It can be like that. I don't think that all the wolves in sheep's clothing fit the same mold or construct their sheep's clothing in the same manner, but this is just one avenue that I have personally witnessed. It's kind of like, in order to fit in and blend in and hide in that manner, they're going to be watching the trends in clothing, in cars, vehicles, in even hobbies, topics. They're going to probably stay up on the news so that they can have something to connect with people, you know, about a topic to converse about and connect with people in that way. And So the motivation, for example, in my example of the news, their motivation for watching the news is not going to be the same motivation as your average person who is not a wolf in sheep's clothing. They're just what you see is what you get kind of person. A person like that, their motivation for watching the news is just wanting to stay up on what's going on in the world, you know? Watching the weather and whatever applies to, you know, their interests or themselves and their family and whatnot. But a wolf in sheep's clothing is going to be watching the news to glean what they perceive to be hot topics so that they can connect with. They've got to have a hook of some kind to try and draw in. That's another way that they hide, not only through acclimating or conforming with the status quo with materialistic type things, but also they cloak themselves by hiding amongst a group of people. So they're real quick to, especially I think if they're afraid of being exposed, like their true activities that are pretty shady, you know, and would really totally destroy any kind of false reputation they've tried to put forth amongst the community. Their true self, if that were to be exposed, it would, I don't know what it would do, but it would not be good for them. You know, they're trying to prevent that. And so that's what they're doing, and they're hiding. Is they're trying to hide their secret life. And maybe many other things too. I'm talking about people that live double lives and stuff, you know, Jekyll and Hyde and that kind of stuff. So, but they hide amongst a group of people too. So they need to be able to quickly, you know, go out and find people. And the quickest and easiest way is to infiltrate a group that's already established. Based on my observations, like a church group of people or whatever it is, if they can go in and convince that whole group at one time, you know, hey, I'm this great person, then it's like, you know, probably a lot easier than having to go out, you know, and just meet random people. But it's sad because, again, I opened in my very sleepy opening that I shared first part of this video, talking about how people, I just mentioned briefly, ironically, how people sometimes will swear up and down they know this person, you know, because I think sometimes people want to be affiliated with someone. Maybe they perceive someone as just being a really great person or whatever it is. And then when they're going and talking to other people, they're like, yeah, I know him or her. Oh, he's a great guy. And really and truly, they don't even know this person very well. See? And it's sad because, you know, thinking about witnesses that are brought into, especially like court cases and stuff. I mean, how legitimate is that kind of stuff as far as like character witnesses? You see what I'm saying? So there's another motivation to go and find these people. But so I'm looking at what it means to be worldly through this definition of meaning the world, meaning the affairs of life and how one lives, and being able to look beyond the surface level stuff that most people just take for granted. It's like they see if this person is a part of this big group, well then it's just like an automatic assumption that oh, they must be like all these others and be a great person. Well, when you've been deceived, then you know that that's not always the case, and you have to look deeper. And we're just trying to learn how to look deeper to protect ourselves and our families, you know. Ideally everybody would look deeper. Wouldn't that be great? But anyways, yes, how you live your life, how one lives their life. So how these wolves construct the sheep's clothing, I think that those in hiding amongst the status quo of materialism, and also a group of people who seem to, at least on the surface, be perceived by the community as a great group of people because of whatever religious affiliation, whatever it is. If they can be a part of that somehow, then that they hide that way too. Okay. there's a drive with wolves in sheep's clothing there's a drive that keeps them busy, a drive that keeps them very, very busy. And I personally think I want to start getting into the heart really now of truthfully what it means when a person is living very worldly. They're in the world and of it. There's personal, true state of affairs. There's this unsettledness with some people, and which can wind up becoming very corrupted within their soul, their spirit, and this is what turns them into a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? A lot of people speculate that they have childhood trauma and things like that, but then yet there's other people who have childhood trauma who don't wind up being this way. So that's a tough one. You know, you can't just lump everybody into the same category or whatnot. But a lot of people think that people who were, what's it called, raised with a silver spoon, people who were brought up privileged, can turn out to just be very entitled in life, and that equates to taking advantage of people and being selfish and stuff. And that may be true in some cases, but again, I don't think that we should generalize ever. But ultimately, the way a person lives their life is what it comes down to. And while we may never truly understand what has happened in a person's life to make them think the way they do, to take the actions that they do, to live the lifestyle that they do, we can at least look at what we can see and try to look as deep as possible at their lifestyle and their state of affairs and the way they live their life to protect ourselves. You know, I think we want to just go way down here to the root of things to figure it all out, and it's just, unfortunately, without all of that information, we're just not going to be able to. And a lot of times we start out having that desire because we truly want to help a person. Because if you are married to a person like this, or you're, you know, real good friends with a person like this, or someone in your family, someone you love, and you've started realizing that something's wrong, you know, and what they're presenting is not who they really are, then your motivation for wanting to get at the root of all this is because you care about the person. But eventually, I think you reach a point where you understand there's just going to be a lot of unknowns, and it's just the way it is, and it'll always be that way. So that's why generalizations are dangerous, in my opinion. And when I was talking earlier about different industries overcomplicating things with extra ingredients and stuff like that, I think that through the lens of trying to figure out this kind of stuff, like in psychology, it can sometimes work against us that way. And because anytime you create a term or a label, it's confining, it's restrictive. Because what it does is it says, this word means this stuff here. I'm trying to do like a sphere or a box. And not all this stuff out here. So it contains a concept which is only possible through the concept of containment, which restricts and leaves out all this other stuff. And the truth a lot of times is so unique within even each person that you're still looking at generalizations. And so I think that a lot of us trying to make sense of this sort of stuff, people we've been involved with in our life, and even ourselves or whatever, we can wind up spinning our wheels and getting stuck in this place for a long time, looking for answers via this kind of method through these restrictive paradigms, and not realizing that we're generalizing, and it's just leaving out these critical elements out here. So when I'm talking about on my channel all the time about having an expanded mindset, that's the reason I do that, is because if you're able to do that, then you're more likely going to have revelations that are meaningful and helpful to you a lot quicker. I have. And I think that for whatever reason, it's like magic. these terms in the Bible are, they are more like that, the expanded way to look at something than a restrictive way at looking at something, to me. And so, I hope this is helpful to you. I'm basing all of my message on my experiences and my research too, and all the times that I feel like these different avenues I took just were a dead end. You know what I mean? It's like, have y'all ever played any games online, or just even if it's not online, video games at all, where you got your controller, or I'll tell you what I'm thinking of, okay? Because I haven't done that a lot. I've done it some with my daughter, and I tried it once when I was like in my early 20s too. I don't remember if it was Xbox or when it was, but recently now my daughter enjoys playing on games on her iPad, and I'll jump in there with her and I'll try to play. And it's fun. It's like we are these little cartoon characters and we're interacting with each other, and she likes to pretend like she's the mom and I'm the daughter, and it's a lot of fun. But I will, on my phone, I'm playing on my phone, she's playing on her iPad, you have to, you know, make your character jump over here on this side, and then over here you've got one other spot to put your thumb, and this is the one that makes her walk, you know, and you can kind of go straight or left or right by sliding your thumb. And then if you want to spin around, you know, kind of turn like this, you have to use this thumb. Well, it took me a while. It's weird how it's natural to kids nowadays. It's like growing up that way, they just pick up on it so quick. But for those of us of older generations, I'll just leave it there, it takes a little work. And so I get really frustrated when I'm trying to you know, walk up to her and look like I'm standing in front of her, you know, we're gonna have a conversation in the game or whatever, because my character's always like, if she's standing here looking this way, my character walks up and she's like this. I'm like, no, get like this, but it should just be like, you know, just wait. I can't get her to line up. And so it's sort of like the time that it takes when we are going down, or when we are approaching, trying to make sense of things in that manner. I think that for myself, I know that for myself, and I'm putting this out there for you, I have found a lot of peace in just letting go of trying to approach it that way. Not only trying to get at the root of understanding, you know, motivations and specific things about a person's past that we'll never know, not only letting that go, but letting go of even hitting the nail on the head when it comes to a specific label. This is why there's always progression in science and all of academia, whatever you call it. There's constant progression and changing. Why would that be? If things are true as they assert in all these various fields, if things are really that true and they're really spot on with what they proclaim in all these different fields of study, science and things, then there should be no need for adjusting and changing. So that it's bizarre to me how things can be asserted as 100% when it's, they call things the practice of this or that, you know. Well, it is practicing. I'll look up etymology of that word sometime. But I still got my Latin English dictionary. I keep this thing with me. So in my Jeep, y'all know Jeeps are not known for being super roomy, right? So I have to kind of be limited with what I bring. And I found this really cool clear backpack at Target, and so I could see, you know, all the books I have in it, and my notebooks, and I've got a few art supplies in there too. But I'm pretty limited with what I can bring in my Jeep. But I have a few things that stay in here with me, and this is one. So if you just enjoy studying words, again, I just really, there we go. I really recommend this. But the point is, for myself, I have just been able to let go of trying to nail down or pinpoint, put my finger on exactly a perfect label for something. It's just, And the other thing from a spiritual lens is this. Excuse me. If you're trying to figure it all out yourself, you're not leaving any room for the numinous to spark a new concept or revelation for you. It's like, again, all this stuff is like a prison, a mental prison, when you just make this strong decision on something, or draw a strong conclusion on something. It's like then your mind is now closed to it. And so to wrap this up, let me share an idea I have, and maybe this will get the wheels turning for you. Okay, so this is just a concept, a theory I have. I think that having an idea, even a rough idea, abstract, obscure, whatever, just a simplified idea of what a person's background is, can be very helpful in discerning who they truly are, regardless of what they assert or put forward in their presentation. I think that this can just be really, really helpful with your discernment, okay, as far as their true nature. Let me give you an example. It's my theory that, and maybe this is just really well known, and I don't know. A lot of times I am the last to know because I don't watch the news and stuff like that, but it's my theory that whatever a person doesn't have in childhood, whatever they experience a lack of, and it affects them, I think it has to be something that's a lack that actually is a meaningful lack in their life. I think that is a strong motivating factor for what they're trying to attain in adulthood. And so let me give you some examples here. So my dad was telling me recently about talking to my aunt, his sister, and she lives out of state, but she's always been a big nature lover, and I have too. All of us, really. A lot of people in my family have been, but they grew up with their grandparents. Their grandparents raised them, and so they were really hands-on, in the farm life and things like that. But I think that watching, for both my dad and his sister, and my dad had to participate in this too, the slaughter of the farm animals for meat. I think that when they were children, I think that probably impacted them. And so my dad's never been into hunting, for example. And so, and look, I'm not a vegetarian or anything like that, but this is just kind of where my mind goes with how things affect a person, And so looking at my dad and my aunt, they're both big animal lovers. And as an example, he was telling me and talking to my aunt recently that she actually has a vulture that, what did he say, has a broken leg or a broken wing or something, and so it's kind of disabled, and she feeds it. She literally gives it like ground beef and stuff like that. And so I thought that was pretty amazing. But she's always been like that, just a huge animal lover, and my dad too, and even myself. So I just think, and she feeds the deer and things like that, and my dad does too. So you see how, they had this aspect in childhood, and then in adulthood, it's like, okay, let me do what feels right to me. But I think that because of what they experienced in childhood, I think that played a part in forming and shaping who they are now. And another example is they didn't have a lot of heat in their home. My dad said that they didn't have a fireplace in their bedroom. And so, or his bedroom, actually. He had his own bedroom. But he would talk about having a glass of water on the nightstand next to him, waking up the next day and it'd be frozen. And that's how cold it was, and seeing your breath, the fog, your breath in the air when he's, covered up in bed. So he's told me hundreds of times growing up how he always said to himself, when he grows up, he just wants a warm house. He wants a warm home. That was a big goal for him. So he had that lack as a child, right? And so I think that, maybe if you grow up without a lot of comforts like that, kind of more on the poor end of the spectrum, with your resources and what you have, your money or whatnot, maybe that makes a person appreciate just the most basic things, and maybe that prevents a person from going down the road of materialism. I don't know, but it's just something to think about. My experience in childhood was, I definitely had way more comforts than he had. My mother was actually raised also by her grandparents too. So they kind of grew up with a lifestyle, and even being taught, being influenced and raised with a mindset of a generation behind, their peers who were raised by their parents, because they were both raised by their grandparents. And I think that affects me too, because that shaped who they are, and then they obviously impacted me, raising me. But I didn't have central air for a large part of my childhood, and so we were all about the fans and things like that. I got a lot of my clothes at Kmart, specifically like the blue light special. They called it the blue light. They would literally have a little moment just randomly pop up if you happen to be in the store at that time. I think they called it literally the blue light special at Kmart, and it was exciting. And they would tell you what part of the store it was going on. Everybody'd run over there real quick, see what the specials were. It was really exciting. And I had some wealthy neighbors that lived across the street that would have yard sales, and their girls were a couple of years ahead of me in school, so it was cool because I got their hand-me-downs, their clothes, and so that was fun. But I never felt like I went without. I really didn't. But I appreciated, when we did get central air. And I never had cable, so I go to school. A lot of the kids would be talking about shows they would watch, on cable TV, and I didn't have that. So, like Beverly Hills 90210, that was a big one. I never got to see that, stuff like that. MTV, I didn't know. So, I just had the few channels with the antenna, and that was okay. So, definitely our childhood shape us. But I'm looking at, patterns and trying to make sense of, what shapes a person today, and how we can understand that whether a person has good intentions and a good spirit versus a person who has bad intentions and a malignant, dangerous spirit within them, no matter how nice they look on the outside. Regardless, we're all shaped by our past, right? So all we have is what's presented now. And so I think that ultimately, this is my conclusion. Ultimately, you have to look at what level of peace a person has, because what's going to make this person content in their adulthood versus what's going to make this person content in their adulthood can be very different things. But what I have noticed is like I don't know if this is the right word, neurotic, like an anxious kind of spirit of lack that is, it's almost like a heightened survival type. I have to do this. I have to get this. I have to. And see, when you're on the observing end of things, and you're seeing a person like who can never just sit still, literally just sit on the porch and enjoy the breeze and just talk about, the birds. Did you see the hummingbird the other day that came by and stuff like that? When I was younger, let me just say, I thought that was boring as all get out. I could not understand how the old people in their 40s and 50s, could just sit on their rumps for hours on end and just talk about nature. That was the most boring thing in the world to me. I remember one time trying to sit with my older family members, extended family, and just see what all this adult talk was about, and I, like, my bottom could not literally stay sitting down for more than about 5 minutes, and I had to get up and start. I had so much energy, like most kids. I was like, okay, well, now I see this was just very boring, and I don't get what they get out of this, but okay. And I got up and ran off with the other kids to play some more. But I think that a lot of times we can see this spirit of striving in an adult and just assume that it's sort of like immaturity, you know, like what I was just saying. Someone who can't sit still. But I think that that's not really doing the matter justice, whether you're trying to help the person, which ultimately only a person can help themselves, ultimately. Or whether you're just trying to discern what's going on with somebody. But this anxiousness, this is there's a strong driving factor there. And I think that considering that, no, you don't know this part of it, but if you do see this part of it, it may give you a clue as to what was missing back here. And then it may just open up new revelations for you. So just something to think about. And again, that's what this is all about, is to get the wheels turning for you. And so just looking for a lack of peace, looking for a spirit of anxious striving, even if it's within yourself. This is not meant to be judgmental. Just look at, you know, if you detect that in yourself, even just be like, what's this about? And just look at the opposite of whatever pacifies this feeling within you. You know, it's sort of like an addictive type, anxious addictive type nature, you know. And I think sometimes too, it's not always apples to apples. Like if a person's just, you know, has an alcohol addiction, for example, it doesn't mean it's because they had a lack of alcohol when they were a kid. You know, sometimes it's like trying to fill, you know, this lack with something that's not the same thing. So that's where you have to really do your work, you know, and figure out. But ultimately, I think that there's a lack there, a basic lack on the hierarchy of needs. Maybe take a look at that online. Just use Google. You know, it's Maslow, I think Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and just really think back on whether it's yourself or someone else, you know, what you know of them and what you can observe today, and try to discern that lack. Because a true, good, healthy relationship, whether it's a friendship or, you know, a romantic relationship, whatever it is only going to be healthy and reciprocal and the way it should be when neither person is using the other in any way, really using the other in any way. But when a person has this unaddressed spirit of striving, I think that, you know, that can place you in a position, if it's this other person, you know, that has the spirit, that can place you in the position to be exploited, you know. So just keep an eye out for that spirit of never being settled, of just constantly striving. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope it got the wheels turning. Thank you so much for coming along to hear it. I know it was super casual. I didn't have any notes, but I still hope you got some value out of it. So I'll have some more videos coming out this weekend too. At least one, if not two. I'll have some more time then. And thank you again. Hope you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you again very soon.